Hey everyone, tonight we delve into the most dangerous and carefully concealed story ever buried in galactic history. The complete truth behind a man who didn't just conquer a galaxy, but manipulated the very fabric of destiny itself across thousands of years. This is the untold saga of Sheev Palpatine, but not the version you think you know. Tonight we uncover the real story of how one being orchestrated the rise and fall of civilizations from the shadows, and why his influence may never truly end. So before we begin this journey into the deepest mysteries of the Force itself, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy exploring these hidden corners of the galaxy far, far away. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what draws you to these ancient chronicles. It's always incredible to see fellow seekers of truth joining us from across the world. Now, settle in somewhere comfortable. Maybe adjust your lighting to something soft and dim. Get wrapped up in your favorite blanket, and let's venture together into the most chilling revelation the galaxy has ever concealed. Deep in the forgotten archives of a ruined temple on Yavin 4, a Jedi historian named Kira Thane made a discovery that would shatter everything the galaxy believed about its recent past. Hidden within a corrupted holocron, she found a single phrase written in ancient Sith script. The death of Palpatine was not his end, but his true beginning. As Master Thane stared at those words glowing in the dim blue light of the archive chamber, the temperature seemed to drop around her. The holocron flickered, and for just a moment, she heard something impossible, a whisper that sounded like laughter echoing from the deepest places in the Force itself. Laughter that belonged to a voice she recognized, a voice that should have been silenced forever on the second Death Star above Endor. But how could this be? How could the Emperor's influence persist decades after his physical destruction? And more terrifying still, what if his death had been planned all along? What if everything the rebellion thought they had accomplished was just another move in a game that began long before their grandparents were born? Tonight, we follow Master Thane as she uncovers a conspiracy so vast and so carefully orchestrated that it spans not just decades, but millennia, a plan that reaches back to the very foundations of the Republic and forward into a future that may already be sealed by choices made in the distant past. The truth about Palpatine begins now, but be warned, some knowledge once gained can never be forgotten. And some truths once spoken can never be unheard. 100 years have passed since the Battle of Endor, and the galaxy has settled into an uneasy peace. The new Republic has grown into something resembling the old democracy, but scars remain. Hidden in the ancient temples of Yavin 4, where Luke Skywalker once trained his first students, the new Jedi Academy now houses the most comprehensive collection of Force artifacts in known space. Master Kira Thane walks through corridors carved from living stone, her footsteps echoing softly against walls that have witnessed 1,000 years of history. The temple complex stretches deep into the moon's crust, its lower levels housing archives that few are permitted to enter. Tonight, she descends past the usual research chambers, past the meditation halls where young Jedi learn to quiet their minds, into the deepest vaults where the most dangerous knowledge sleeps. Kira possesses a rare gift among Force users, where others sense emotions and intentions. She can read the psychometric imprints left on objects by those who handled them. A touched document reveals not just its contents, but the emotional state of its author. A weapon carries echoes of every battle it has seen. This ability has made her invaluable to the Academy, but it has also shown her truths that most would prefer remained hidden. The air grows cooler as she descends. Ancient Massassi stonework gives way to newer construction, chambers built specifically to contain artifacts too dangerous for normal study. Preservation fields hum quietly, maintaining perfect environmental conditions for holocrons that predate the Republic. Some contain the wisdom of ancient Jedi Masters. Others hold the twisted knowledge of Sith Lords whose names have been deliberately forgotten. Kira pauses before a sealed vault marked with warnings in 17 different languages. Inside rest the personal effects of Darth Sidious, recovered from various Imperial strongholds after the Empire's fall. For decades, these items have remained untouched, considered too corrupted for safe study. But recent events have forced the Academy's hand. 3 months ago, sensitive Force users across the galaxy began experiencing the same vision, a figure in a dark robe standing before a massive star map, manipulating points of light with impossible precision. The figure's face remained hidden, but his laughter was unmistakable. It was a sound that had haunted the nightmares of an entire generation. Kira enters her access codes, and the vault door slides open with a whisper of equalizing air pressure. Inside, rows of sealed containers line the walls, personal holocrons, ancient texts, even fragments of clothing that once belonged to the Emperor. Each item radiates a subtle wrongness, a distortion in the Force that makes her skin crawl. She approaches a particular container, one that has called to her for weeks now. Inside rests a damaged holocron, its crystalline structure partially melted as if exposed to tremendous heat. According to the recovery reports, it was found in the ruins of Palpatine's private study on Coruscant, somehow surviving the orbital bombardment that leveled the Imperial Palace. As her fingers touch the container's surface, images flood her mind. A young man standing in a Naboo garden, his smile warm and genuine, as he speaks with his parents. But beneath that smile, something else lurks. Something patient and calculating that watches from behind kind eyes. The vision shifts. The same young man, now older, sits across from a figure shrouded in darkness. They speak in whispers, and though she cannot make out the words, she feels the weight of ancient knowledge being passed from teacher to student. Knowledge that should have died with the last Sith Lord 1,000 years ago. Dr. Callus Ren enters the vault behind her, his weathered face creased with concern. Once an Imperial historian, he defected during the war's final months, bringing with him caches of classified documents that proved invaluable to understanding the Empire's true structure. Now in his 70s, he serves as the Academy's chief Imperial historian, one of the few beings alive who truly understands how Palpatine's government actually functioned. You felt it too, didn't you? Kira asks without turning around. The disturbance 3 months ago wasn't random. It was a signal. Callus nods slowly. I've been cross-referencing the timing with archived Imperial communications. There's a pattern, Master Thane. Every major decision Palpatine made, every political maneuver, every military strategy, they all correlate with specific dates that seem random unless you know what to look for. And what should we be looking for? Ancient Sith calendars, astronomical alignments that occur once every few centuries. It's as if he was following a schedule written long before he was born. Kira finally turns to face him, and he sees something in her eyes that makes him step back involuntarily. The psychometric reading has shown her something that has shaken her to her core. It's worse than that, Callus. What I just saw in that holocron, it suggests that Palpatine didn't create his own schedule. Someone else did. Someone who knew exactly when and how the Republic would fall, because they had been planning it for generations. The temperature in the vault seems to drop several degrees, and both of them feel a subtle shift in the force around them. Somewhere in the darkness between the containers, something stirs, not a physical presence, but an echo of consciousness, a whisper of awareness that should not exist. Callus's voice drops to barely above a whisper. If that's true, then everything we thought we knew about the Empire is wrong. The Clone Wars, the Jedi Purge, the Death Stars, all of it was just following a script written by someone who saw centuries into the future. Or, Kira says, her hand moving instinctively to her lightsaber, someone who had the power to make the future conform to their will. Above them, Yavin 4's jungle settles into its nightly rhythm. Nocturnal creatures call to each other through the humid air. their voices blending with the distant sound of waterfalls and the whisper of wind through ancient stones. But here in the depths of the temple, surrounded by artifacts of unimaginable evil, two scholars stand on the edge of a discovery that will change everything they thought they knew about the nature of power, destiny, and the eternal struggle between light and dark. The decision weighs heavy in the quiet hours before dawn. Master Thane sits in her private chambers, watching Yavin's primary sun rise through the mist that clings to the jungle canopy. The damaged holocron rests on her meditation table, its fractured surface catching the early light like a broken mirror, reflecting fragments of truth. 3 days have passed since her first contact with the artifact, and the visions have only grown stronger. Each meditation brings new glimpses into a past that should have been thoroughly documented, yet somehow remains shrouded in deliberate mystery. She sees a young Palpatine moving through the halls of Naboo's finest university, his academic brilliance already legendary among his professors. But in these visions there is always another figure lurking at the edges, someone whose face remains hidden in shadow, but whose presence radiates an ancient hunger. Dr. Wren enters without knocking, a privilege earned through weeks of shared research and growing trust. His arms are full of data cards and printed documents, evidence of his sleepless nights spent combing through imperial archives. His weathered face shows the strain of someone who has seen too much history twisted into lies, and now must face the possibility that even his careful reconstructions of the truth may be built on foundations of deception. "I found something that changes everything," he says, settling into the chair across from her meditation table. 3 separate Imperial intelligence reports classified at the highest levels, all referencing something called Project Sidious. But here's the disturbing part. These reports date back 40 years before Palpatine ever declared himself Emperor. They speak of it as an ongoing operation, not something new. Kira extends her hand toward the data cards, and even before touching them, she feels the psychometric impressions radiating from their surfaces. Fear, confusion, and beneath it all, a terrible certainty that the authors were documenting something far beyond their understanding. What kind of operation could span 4 decades without anyone in the government knowing about it? She asks, though part of her already suspects the answer. The kind that creates governments rather than serving them, Wren replies grimly. I've cross-referenced these dates with galactic political events, every major shift in Republic policy, every strategic alliance, every economic decision that seemed brilliantly timed. They all correspond with progress reports in the Project Sidious files. The implications settle over them like a cold wind. If Wren's analysis is correct, then Palpatine's rise to power wasn't the result of his political genius, but the culmination of a plan that had been shaping galactic events since before he was born. Someone had been moving pieces across the board for decades, creating the exact conditions that would allow a senator from Naboo to become Emperor of the galaxy. Kira stands and moves to the window, where the jungle of Yavin 4 stretches endlessly toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, in archives scattered across dozens of worlds, lie the remaining pieces of this impossible puzzle. But she knows that finding them will require more than simple research. The Force itself seems to be guiding her toward specific locations, as if the very fabric of reality is eager to reveal secrets that have been hidden for too long. "We need to go to Naboo," she says finally. "Whatever this conspiracy is, it started there. The visions I've been receiving all center on Palpatine's youth, on decisions made and alliances formed while he was still a student. If we're going to understand how someone could orchestrate the fall of a 1,000-year-old republic, we need to see where it began." Wren nods, though she can see the reluctance in his expression. He has spent years trying to distance himself from the darkness of his imperial past, and now she is asking him to dive deeper into it than ever before. But his historian's instincts are stronger than his personal discomfort. The truth, however terrible, must be preserved. The preparation for their journey takes the better part of the morning. Cora seals away her other research projects, each one carefully catalogued and stored in the Academy's vast archives. Her work on ancient Jedi philosophies, her study of Force techniques lost during the Purge, her analysis of Sith artifacts recovered from Korriban, all of it must wait. This new mystery has claimed her complete attention, and she suspects it will not release her until every secret has been dragged into the light. She packs carefully, selecting artifacts and research tools that might prove useful in the field, a portable holocron reader, designed to safely access damaged Sith technology, psychometric enhancers that will allow her to read deeper emotional imprints from ancient objects, protective talismans crafted by the Academy's most skilled artisans, designed to shield the wearer from dark side corruption during extended exposure to Sith artifacts. Dr. Wren gathers his own materials with the efficiency of someone who has fled dangerous situations before. Encrypted datapads containing his most sensitive research, portable document scanners, communication equipment designed to penetrate even the most sophisticated jamming systems. But she notices that he also packs a blaster, its worn grip suggesting years of careful maintenance. Even after decades as an academic, he has not forgotten the skills that kept him alive during the Empire's final desperate months. As they make their final preparations, other members of the Academy staff begin to take notice. Master Yoda's Force ghost appears in Kira's chambers as she conducts her final meditation, his ancient eyes filled with concern and something that might be warning. Dangerous. This path is, he says, his voice carrying the weight of 900 years of experience. Seek answers, you do, but answers sometimes more terrible than questions they are. Changed by this knowledge, you will be. Return unchanged, you cannot. Master Yoda, Kira replies respectfully. If we don't seek these answers, how many more will suffer from ignorance? How many more Palpatines are out there, following plans we don't even know exist? The ancient Jedi's expression grows sad, and for a moment she sees in his eyes the same weariness she felt when first touching the damaged holocron. Much suffering already there has been, but necessary. Some suffering is for wisdom to grow. Clouded, the future is. See clearly, I cannot. What awaits you? His form begins to fade, but his final words linger in the air like an echo. Trust in the Force, you must, but careful be that trust the Force leads you not into the trap another has prepared. The journey to their ship takes them through the temple's main corridors, past training chambers where young Jedi practice lightsaber forms that were nearly lost forever, past meditation gardens where students learn to quiet their minds and open themselves to the Force's guidance, past the memorial hall where the names of those who died fighting the Empire are carved in eternal stone. Each step takes them further from the safety of the known and deeper into mysteries that may have consequences far beyond their ability to foresee. But Kira feels a certainty growing within her, a sense that this path has been laid out for her long before she chose to walk it. The Force itself seems to be pulling her forward toward revelations that will reshape not just her understanding of recent history, but her comprehension of the very nature of destiny and choice. Their transport ship is a modified courier vessel, fast enough to outrun Imperial remnants, but unremarkable enough to avoid drawing attention. As they lift off from Yavin 4's surface, Kira watches the temple complex grow smaller below them, its ancient stones holding secrets that have waited centuries for the right moment to be revealed. Soon they will enter hyperspace, beginning a journey that will take them not just across the galaxy, but backward through time to the origins of the greatest deception ever perpetrated against a free civilization. The stars stretch into lines of light as the hyperdrive engages, and in that moment of transition between normal space and the strange realm of faster-than-light travel, Kira feels something she has never experienced before. It is as if the universe itself is watching, waiting to see what truths will be uncovered and what consequences will follow. The feeling is both exhilarating and terrifying, like standing at the edge of a vast abyss while knowing that the only way forward is to leap into the darkness and trust that something will catch her before she falls too far to find her way back. Naboo emerges from hyperspace, like a jewel suspended against the velvet of space, its surface a tapestry of green continents and sapphire oceans that has inspired poets and artists for millennia. But as their transport approaches the planet's atmosphere, Kira feels something else beneath its renowned beauty. A subtle wrongness in the force, like a discordant note in an otherwise perfect symphony. The sensation grows stronger as they descend toward the Seed, the capital city that spawned the man who would become the galaxy's greatest monster. The city itself seems unchanged from the holorecords Kira has studied. Graceful spires rise from carefully tended gardens, connected by bridges that arch over cascading waterfalls. The architecture speaks of a civilization that values beauty and harmony, one that has known peace for so long that the very concept of war seems alien to its design. Yet beneath this serene facade something darker lurks, waiting to be discovered. Their landing at the city's diplomatic port is unremarkable, just another research team seeking access to the planet's historical archives. But as Kira steps onto Naboo's surface for the first time, the psychometric impressions hit her like a physical blow. Echoes of ancient conversations, fragments of half-remembered meetings, the lingering emotional residue of decisions that changed the course of galactic history. All of it centered around one family name that has become synonymous with ultimate evil. The royal palace rises before them like a monument to civilized governance, its walls glowing warm amber in the afternoon light of Naboo's sun. Queen Nadutni, elected only 2 years ago, has granted them unlimited access to the royal archives, partly out of genuine scholarly interest, and partly from a desire to finally understand how her peaceful world produced such darkness. The current government of Naboo has spent decades trying to distance itself from Palpatine's legacy, but the shadow of the Empire still falls across their planet like a curse that cannot be lifted. Palace Archivist C.O. Bibble, grandson of the man who served during the Trade Federation blockade, escorts them through corridors lined with centuries of Naboo art and culture. His knowledge of the archives is encyclopedic, but Kira notices that he grows uncomfortable whenever their conversation turns to the Palpatine family. Like many of his generation, he has spent his life trying to understand how their peaceful world could have produced such a monster, and the lack of satisfying answers has left him deeply unsettled. The Palpatine family records are stored in Sublevel 7, he explains, as they descend through increasingly restricted sections of the palace. Much of it is routine political correspondence, financial records, academic transcripts, but there are some materials that have never been properly analyzed, items that were sealed by order of the imperial government and only recently declassified. The archive chamber itself is a marvel of preservation technology, its walls lined with climate-controlled storage units that have protected Naboo's historical documents for over 500 years. But as they enter the section devoted to the Palpatine family, Kira feels the temperature seem to drop several degrees. The force here is disturbed, agitated, as if the very presence of these documents creates ripples in reality itself. Dr. Wren begins his systematic examination of the official records while Kira focuses her psychometric abilities on items that might carry stronger emotional imprints. Financial documents reveal the family's steady accumulation of wealth and political influence over several generations, but nothing that seems particularly unusual for a prominent political dynasty. Academic records show young Sheev's exceptional intelligence and natural charisma, traits that would serve him well in his later political career. But then they discover the sealed compartment. Hidden behind a false wall in one of the older storage units, they find a collection of documents that tell a very different story. Personal correspondence between members of the Palpatine family and individuals whose names appear nowhere in official government records. Financial transactions that involve staggering sums of money with no apparent source. Most disturbing of all, a series of encrypted communications that reference events years before they actually occurred. Look at this. Ren says, his voice tight with barely controlled excitement and fear. He holds up a datapad containing what appears to be a routine family letter dated to Shiv's 16th birthday. It's from his great-uncle, congratulating him on his academic achievements. But read this paragraph carefully. Kira takes the datapad and reads aloud. Your studies in ancient languages continue to impress your tutors, particularly your grasp of dialects that most scholars consider purely theoretical. Your mentor speaks highly of your progress in understanding the deeper meanings behind historical texts. Soon you will be ready to begin the practical applications of your education. Ancient languages, she murmurs. Dialects that most scholars consider purely theoretical. What kind of languages would fit that description? They both know the answer before either speaks it aloud. The only ancient languages that modern scholars consider theoretical are those of the Sith, supposedly extinct for 1,000 years and known only through fragments preserved in Jedi archives. For a teenage student on Naboo to be studying such things suggests either remarkable academic curiosity or something far more sinister. Their investigation takes on new urgency as they search for more references to this mysterious mentor. They find him mentioned obliquely in dozens of documents, always as your teacher or the professor, never by name. Financial records show regular payments to someone identified only by a code number, payments that continue for years and represent far more money than any normal tutor would command. The breakthrough comes when Kira applies her psychometric abilities to a simple stylus found among Shiv's personal effects from his university years. The moment her fingers touch the metal surface, visions flood her mind with overwhelming clarity. She sees a young man who looks like Palpatine, but lacks the hidden coldness that would later define him. This version of Shiv still possesses genuine warmth, real friendship, authentic compassion for others. But as the vision progresses, she watches that warmth slowly drain away, replaced by something calculated and artificial. The transformation takes place over many months, during private meetings with a figure whose face remains frustratingly obscured. But she can sense the presence of this mentor, and it radiates a darkness so profound that it makes her physically ill. This is no ordinary teacher sharing academic knowledge. This is something ancient and hungry, something that feeds on corruption and grows stronger with each innocence it destroys. He wasn't born evil, she whispers, releasing the stylus and struggling to maintain her composure. He was made evil. Someone spent years systematically destroying everything good in him and replacing it with ambition and hatred. But the most disturbing discovery comes when they examine the timing of these transformative sessions. Cross-referencing the dates with galactic political events reveals a pattern that defies coincidence. Every major session with the mysterious mentor corresponds with significant political developments across the galaxy. Treaties signed, conflicts started, leaders assassinated, economic policies implemented. It is as if someone was using young Palpatine as a focus for events happening light years away. The final piece of the puzzle emerges from the most unlikely source, buried in what appears to be routine maintenance records for the family estate. They find a work order for the construction of a private study in the estate's sub-basement. The specifications are unusual for a family residence: electromagnetic shielding, sound dampening, and most curiously, a specialized air filtration system designed to handle atmospheric contaminants of unknown origin. When they access the estate's architectural plans, they discover that this private study was connected to the city's ancient sewer system through a passage that doesn't appear on any official blueprints. The passage leads to a section of Thid's underground infrastructure that predates the current city by several centuries, back to the time when Naboo was first colonized by human settlers fleeing the political upheavals of the core worlds. Someone built a secret meeting place, Ren realizes as they study the architectural diagrams. Somewhere the mentor could come and go without being seen, using tunnels that most people don't even know exist. But their investigation is interrupted by a discovery that sends chills through both of them. Hidden within the maintenance records, written in what appears to be a child's handwriting, they find a single sentence that changes everything. Today I learned that sympathy and fear are the same emotion worn on different faces. Tomorrow, I begin my real education under the guidance of my true master. The handwriting analysis confirms it was written by Sheev Palpatine at age 16, but the ink contains trace elements that shouldn't exist in any normal writing implement. Spectral analysis reveals microscopic quantities of minerals found only on ancient Sith worlds, worlds that were supposedly quarantined and forgotten centuries before Palpatine's birth. As evening settles over the seed, casting the palace in warm golden light, Kira and Ren sit in stunned silence as the implications of their discovery settle over them. They have found evidence that Palpatine's transformation from idealistic young student to galactic tyrant was not a natural progression, but the result of deliberate manipulation by someone with access to knowledge and resources that should not exist. The question that haunts them both is simple yet terrifying. If Palpatine was created rather than born, how many others like him might be out there? How many other young people across the galaxy might be undergoing similar transformations, being shaped into weapons that will not reveal their true purpose for decades to come? Outside their window, Naboo's twin moons rise over the peaceful city, their light reflecting off the waterfalls that have given Theed its reputation as one of the galaxy's most beautiful capitals. But beauty, they are learning, can hide the deepest evils, and the most pleasant surfaces can conceal the most carefully prepared traps. Tomorrow, they will venture into the underground passages beneath Theed, following a trail that may lead them to the very source of the galaxy's greatest nightmare. But tonight, they must wrestle with the knowledge that everything they thought they understood about the nature of evil and the rise of tyranny may be nothing more than carefully constructed lies, designed to hide a truth far more terrible than anyone has dared to imagine. The morning sun filters through the crystal windows of their temporary quarters in the royal palace guest wing. The discoveries of the previous day weigh heavily on their minds, yet as they review their findings in the cold light of dawn, a different interpretation begins to emerge. Perhaps they have been seeing conspiracy where none exists, reading sinister meaning into evidence that might have perfectly mundane explanations. Dr. Ren spreads their collected documents across the ornate table that dominates their sitting room, his historian's training demanding that he approach their findings with rigorous skepticism. The financial records, when examined more carefully, reveal patterns that could easily be explained by legitimate business dealings. The Palpatine family's wealth and influence grew steadily over generations, but so did that of many prominent political dynasties throughout the galaxy. Their rise to prominence follows classical patterns documented in hundreds of similar cases across Republic history. Look at this objectively, Ren says, pointing to a chronological chart he has constructed during the sleepless hours before dawn. Every successful political family follows similar trajectories. They accumulate wealth through strategic investments, form alliances with other influential families, and gradually expand their sphere of influence. The Palpatines were simply more successful at it than most. Kira examines the chart with growing reluctance to abandon her initial suspicions, but she cannot deny the logic of his analysis. The mysterious mentor could have been nothing more than a private tutor hired to give young Sheev advantages in his political education. Wealthy families across the galaxy employ such specialists, often paying premium prices for instructors with unique expertise. The secrecy surrounding this arrangement might simply reflect the family's desire to maintain competitive advantages in Naboo's complex political landscape. And the ancient languages, she asks, though she already suspects his answer. Academic curiosity, possibly combined with a genuine gift for linguistics, Ren replies. Brilliant students often pursue esoteric subjects that their peers ignore. The fact that young Palpatine studied theoretical ancient dialects might indicate nothing more than exceptional intellectual ambition. Many scholars throughout history have reconstructed dead languages from fragmentary evidence. The stylus that triggered Kira's psychometric vision presents the most challenging evidence to dismiss, but even here alternative explanations exist. Her visions of Palpatine's transformation from idealistic youth to calculating politician could reflect the natural hardening that occurs when young people are exposed to the realities of political power. Every successful politician learns to mask genuine emotions behind strategic facades, to replace authentic relationships with calculated alliances. As they continue their analysis, a communication arrives from Coruscant that seems to resolve their remaining doubts. The New Republic's Central Archives have finally located the complete files of Jedi Knight Kieran Voss, the investigator who examined young Palpatine decades earlier. The delay in finding these records was caused by simple bureaucratic confusion rather than any sinister concealment. Voss's investigation was transferred between several different archive systems during the chaos of the Imperial collapse, and the complete files were only recently reassembled. Master Jedi Voss's report makes for fascinating reading, but it provides no support for theories about dark side manipulation or Sith involvement. His investigation was thorough and professional, examining every aspect of young Palpatine's life and activities. He interviewed family members, teachers, classmates, and political associates. He conducted multiple Force sensitivity tests and monitored Palpatine for any signs of unusual psychic abilities or dark side corruption. The investigation's conclusion is unambiguous. Sheev Palpatine showed no evidence of Force sensitivity whatsoever. His political successes resulted from natural charisma, exceptional intelligence, and strategic thinking rather than any form of Force manipulation. Voss's report notes that while Palpatine possessed an unusually keen understanding of human psychology and group dynamics, these traits fell well within the normal range for gifted politicians. "This settles it," Wren says with obvious relief as he finishes reading Voss's complete report. Palpatine was exactly what he appeared to be, a brilliant political mind who used conventional methods to achieve extraordinary results. There's no conspiracy here, no secret Sith influence, no ancient plan spanning generations, just one man's remarkable ability to understand and manipulate political systems. Kira wants to feel the same relief, but something continues to disturb her about the ease with which all their suspicions had been resolved. The timing of the archive discovery seems almost too convenient, arriving precisely when they most needed answers. And while Voss's investigation appears thorough, she notices subtle inconsistencies in his methodology that suggest either incomplete information or deliberate misdirection. "What happened to Voss after he filed this report?" she asks, though the question seems to surprise Wren. According to his personnel file, he requested transfer to agricultural worlds in the Outer Rim. Apparently, the investigation affected him deeply, and he wanted to spend his remaining years in peaceful service far from political intrigue. This detail troubles Kira more than she can articulate. In her experience, Jedi who request remote assignments after sensitive investigations usually do so because they have discovered something that disturbs them profoundly. The official explanation suggests that Voss was simply tired of political corruption, but experienced Jedi learn to cope with such disappointments without abandoning their duties entirely. She decides to conduct one final psychometric reading, this time focusing on Voss's personal notes rather than the evidence he examined. The moment her fingers touch the datapad containing his private observations, she receives impressions that contradict everything in his official report. Fear, confusion, and a growing certainty that he was investigating something far more dangerous than a gifted young politician. Hidden beneath the surface thoughts recorded in his notes, she senses deeper concerns that he deliberately excluded from his final report. Voss suspected that his investigation was being monitored, that information was being withheld from him, and that his conclusions were being guided toward predetermined outcomes. But most disturbing of all, she feels his growing awareness that filing an accurate report might put him in mortal danger. He was forced to lie, she says, though the words feel strange even as she speaks them. Voss found evidence of something that terrified him, but he couldn't include it in his official report without risking his life. Wren's expression shows the struggle between his desire for simple explanations and his growing recognition that the evidence points toward darker possibilities. As a former imperial historian, he has seen how thoroughly authoritarian regimes can manipulate historical records, but the scope of deception they are uncovering suggests something far more sophisticated than typical government propaganda. Their debate is interrupted by the arrival of Palace Archivist Seo Bibble, whose normally composed demeanor shows signs of considerable agitation. He carries with him a sealed container that he places on their table with obvious reluctance, as if touching it causes him physical discomfort. "I debated whether to bring this to your attention," he says, his voice tight with suppressed anxiety. "It was discovered this morning during routine maintenance in the palace's sub-basement levels. The workers found it sealed behind a wall that was constructed sometime during Palpatine's youth. The construction records show that the work was ordered by the Palpatine family, but paid for by an unidentified third party. Inside the container, they find a collection of items that seem to confirm their worst suspicions while simultaneously offering innocent explanations. Ancient texts written in languages that predate the Republic, but these could be legitimate archaeological artifacts collected by scholarly enthusiasts. Personal correspondence between young Palpatine and someone identified only as teacher, but the tone suggests academic mentorship rather than sinister manipulation. Most significantly, they discover what appears to be a partial record of conversations between Palpatine and his mysterious mentor. The transcripts reveal discussions of political theory, historical analysis, and strategic planning that demonstrate exceptional sophistication for someone so young. But they also contain references to concepts and techniques that seem distinctly familiar to anyone who has studied Sith philosophy. This is the problem with investigating historical mysteries. Wren observes as they examine the transcripts. Every piece of evidence can be interpreted multiple ways. What looks like sinister manipulation to suspicious minds might appear as exceptional education to objective observers. Yet even as he speaks these words, Kira notices that his hands shake slightly as he handles the documents. Whatever rational explanations his mind constructs, his instincts recognize something dangerous in these materials. The Force itself seems to recoil from contact with these artifacts, creating subtle disturbances that she feels even without attempting psychometric readings. As afternoon settles into evening, they find themselves no closer to definitive answers than when they began. The evidence for Palpatine's political genius is overwhelming and well documented. His rise to power followed logical patterns that any student of galactic politics could trace and understand. The mysterious elements surrounding his youth might reflect nothing more than a wealthy family's efforts to provide their gifted son with advantages that less privileged students could never access. But beneath this rational analysis, both investigators feel a growing unease that they cannot shake. The Force continues to whisper warnings that they cannot quite interpret, suggesting that their search for truth has only begun to scratch the surface of a mystery far more complex and dangerous than they have yet imagined. Dr. Wren closes his files with a gesture of finality, though his expression suggests anything but resolution. "Perhaps we've been chasing shadows," he says. "Perhaps the real story is simply that exceptional individuals sometimes emerge from ordinary circumstances and change the course of history through sheer force of personality and intelligence." Kira nods agreement, but her thoughts remain troubled by inconsistencies that refuse to resolve themselves into neat explanations. As night falls over the Eid, casting the palace in warm artificial light, she finds herself staring out at the city's peaceful streets while wrestling with the uncomfortable certainty that their investigation has raised more questions than it has answered. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the palace walls, secrets wait to be discovered that will either confirm their suspicions or finally put them to rest. But for now, they must be content with partial truths and incomplete understanding, knowing that the complete story of Sheev Palpatine's transformation from promising young politician to galactic tyrant may be far more complex and disturbing than either of them is prepared to comprehend. The hyperspace journey from Naboo to Coruscant passes in contemplative silence, with both investigators lost in their own thoughts as the stars streak past their viewport in brilliant lines of blue and white. The comfortable explanations they constructed on Naboo feel increasingly fragile now that they have distance from the immediate evidence, like logical structures built on foundations that might not be as solid as they appeared. Kira spends long hours in meditation, seeking guidance from the Force about their next steps, but instead of clarity, she receives only fragments of vision and sensation that seem to point toward darker possibilities lurking beneath the surface of their discoveries. The Force itself seems unsettled, as if their investigation has disturbed something that was meant to remain hidden, something that grows more dangerous the closer they come to understanding its true nature. Dr. Wren occupies himself with deeper analysis of the documents they recovered from Naboo, applying sophisticated analytical techniques to extract information that might not be immediately apparent. His years of experience with Imperial propaganda have taught him to recognize the subtle signs of information manipulation, and the more carefully he examines their evidence, the more convinced he becomes that they are seeing only the surface layer of a much more complex deception. Coruscant appears before them as they drop out of hyperspace, its surface a glittering tapestry of lights that represents the beating heart of galactic civilization. But even this familiar sight carries new significance now that they understand how thoroughly the Empire manipulated the political structures that govern trillions of beings across the galaxy. If their growing suspicions prove correct, then even the new Republic might be built on foundations that were corrupted long before anyone realized the danger. The ruins of the old Jedi Temple rise from Coruscant's endless cityscape, like a monument to catastrophic failure, its broken spires and shattered walls serving as a permanent reminder of how completely the Sith succeeded in destroying their ancient enemies. But beneath the visible destruction, extensive restoration work has been ongoing for decades, gradually recovering archives and artifacts that survived the Clone Wars and the subsequent Imperial occupation. Master Luke Skywalker himself greets them at the temple's landing platform, his presence lending additional gravity to their investigation. Word of their research has reached the highest levels of the new Jedi Order, and the significance of understanding Palpatine's true origins extends far beyond simple historical curiosity. If the Sith possessed techniques for creating and controlling political leaders across generations, then the current galactic government might still be vulnerable to similar manipulation. Master Thane, Luke says, as they walk through corridors where she can still sense echoes of ancient battles and profound loss. Your preliminary reports have raised concerns that go to the very heart of our understanding about the nature of the dark side. If Palpatine was created rather than corrupted, it suggests capabilities that we haven't encountered in any of our previous studies of Sith methodology. The temple's restored archives occupy several levels deep beneath the main structure, protected by layers of both technological security and force-based wards designed to prevent unauthorized access to the most dangerous materials. Here, the new Jedi Order has gathered artifacts and documents recovered from across the galaxy, creating the most comprehensive collection of dark side materials ever assembled for scholarly study. Their first breakthrough comes from an unexpected source: personal journals kept by Jedi Masters who served on the Council during the final decades of the Republic. These private records, never intended for official archives, contain observations and suspicions that were deemed too speculative for inclusion in formal reports. Reading between the lines of these intimate thoughts, a pattern begins to emerge that validates their growing concerns about the scope of Sith infiltration. Master Sifo-Dyas, whose name appears frequently in official records related to the clone army's creation, left behind detailed notes about his growing conviction that the Republic was under systematic attack by forces that had been planning their assault for centuries. His journals describe conversations with other council members about unusual patterns in galactic politics, coincidences that seemed too convenient to be natural, and a growing sense that major decisions were being influenced by techniques they didn't understand. Look at this entry from 15 years before the Clone Wars, Kira says, reading from Sifo-Dyas's private notes. He writes about sensing something he calls artificial convergences in the political realm, situations where multiple factors align in ways that seem to serve specific strategic purposes without any apparent coordination between the involved parties. But even more disturbing are references to attempts by various Jedi Masters to investigate these patterns more systematically. Several council members proposed formal studies of what they termed political force manipulation, but these proposals were consistently blocked by procedures and administrative delays that effectively prevented any serious investigation from taking place. Dr. Wren's expertise proves invaluable as they examine the political context surrounding these blocked investigations. His knowledge of imperial administrative techniques allows him to recognize similar patterns in Republic-era documents, suggesting that the same methods used to control information during Palpatine's reign were already being employed decades before his rise to power. Someone was already inside the system, he realizes as they map the bureaucratic obstacles that prevented effective Jedi investigation. These aren't random administrative failures. They're deliberate interference designed to look like normal governmental dysfunction. Their investigation takes on new urgency as they discover evidence that the Sith infiltration of Republic institutions was far more extensive than anyone had previously imagined. Financial records show systematic manipulation of funding for Jedi activities, with resources being diverted away from investigative functions and toward more easily controlled administrative tasks. Personnel assignments were influenced to separate Jedi with complementary skills who might have been effective as investigative teams. Most chilling of all, they find evidence that certain Jedi were targeted for elimination not because they posed immediate threats, but because their unique abilities or areas of expertise might have made them effective at uncovering Sith operations. Accidents, illnesses, and mission casualties that had seemed like tragic but random events now appear to follow patterns designed to systematically remove potential threats to long-term Sith plans. The archives contain one particularly significant discovery, a damaged holocron that belonged to Jedi Master Dooku before his fall to the dark side. The device is severely corrupted, its crystal matrix partially dissolved by exposure to dark side energy, but Kira's psychometric abilities allow her to extract fragmentary impressions of its contents. What she finds confirms their worst fears about the scope of Sith planning and infiltration. Dooku's holocron contains references to conversations with a mysterious figure he calls the Master, someone who possessed knowledge of ancient Sith techniques and claimed to be implementing a plan that had been in development for over 1,000 years. This Master spoke of other students being prepared across the galaxy, individuals who would be positioned to influence key events at crucial moments in galactic history. Dooku wasn't Palpatine's first apprentice, Kira realizes, as the implications of this discovery settle over them. He was part of a network, a system of individuals being groomed for specific roles in a plan so complex that no single person could understand its full scope. But the most disturbing revelation comes from references to what Dooku's master called the conditioning protocols. These appear to be sophisticated techniques for psychological manipulation that could fundamentally alter an individual's personality and moral framework while leaving their intellectual capabilities intact. The process was gradual and subtle, designed to appear as natural character development rather than external manipulation. Dr. Wren goes pale as he reads these descriptions, recognizing similarities to techniques he has seen referenced in Imperial psychological warfare manuals. If they could reliably create personalities to order, molding individuals into whatever they needed for specific purposes, then how many people in positions of authority across the galaxy might be products of such conditioning? Their evening research session takes place in one of the temple's restored meditation chambers, where the presence of light-side energy provides some protection against the psychological effects of prolonged exposure to Sith materials. But even here, surrounded by the accumulated wisdom and strength of generations of Jedi, they both feel the weight of the darkness they are investigating. Kira attempts a deeper meditation, seeking guidance from Force spirits who might possess knowledge relevant to their investigation. The response she receives is both illuminating and terrifying. Ancient Jedi Masters, some whose names have been lost to history, appear to confirm that the current crisis has roots extending back centuries before the Clone Wars. The shadow has been growing for longer than any living being remembers, speaks the spirit of a master, whose robes suggest origins in the Old Republic era. What you call the Sith plan is but the latest manifestation of something that has been working to corrupt the balance of the Force since before the Jedi Order took its current form. Another spirit, this one appearing to be from an even more ancient period, adds the techniques you have discovered are fragments of knowledge that was supposed to have been destroyed. Someone has preserved and refined methods that were considered too dangerous for use even during the Great Hyperspace War. But perhaps most disturbing is the revelation that certain Jedi throughout history have tried to investigate and expose these ongoing threats only to be discredited, marginalized, or eliminated before they could complete their work. The current investigation represents not the first attempt to understand the scope of Sith infiltration, but possibly the first that might succeed in revealing the complete truth. As night settles over Coruscant's endless cityscape, Kira and Dr. Wren find themselves in possession of evidence that reshapes their understanding of galactic history. The rise and fall of the Empire was not an isolated catastrophe, but one chapter in a conflict that has been ongoing for millennia. The techniques used to create and control Palpatine represent only a small fraction of capabilities that have been developed and refined over centuries of patient planning. Luke Skywalker joins them for a late consultation, his expression grave as he reviews their findings. If this information is accurate, he says, then the victory at Endor was far less decisive than we believed. We may have defeated one manifestation of an ancient evil, but the underlying threat remains as dangerous as ever. The implications extend far beyond simple historical revision. If Sith techniques for creating and controlling political leaders are still viable, then current galactic governments might be vulnerable to manipulation by enemies they cannot detect. The paranoia and mistrust that characterized the Empire's final years might actually have been justified responses to real threats that still exist. But buried within the darkness of these revelations, they also find reason for hope. The very fact that they have been able to uncover this evidence suggests that the Sith plan, however sophisticated, is not perfect. Ancient protective measures built into the Force itself seem to be guiding their investigation, ensuring that the truth will eventually emerge despite all attempts to conceal it. As they prepare to rest before continuing their investigation, both researchers understand that they have crossed a threshold from which there can be no return. The comfortable ignorance that allowed them to view Palpatine as an isolated historical aberration has been permanently shattered. In its place, they must now grapple with the terrifying possibility that the galaxy's greatest nightmares are not safely relegated to the past, but remain active threats that could emerge at any moment from the shadows where they have been patiently waiting for their next opportunity to strike. The descent into the deepest levels of the restored Jedi Temple feels like a journey backward through time itself, each sub-level representing another layer of history buried beneath the weight of accumulated secrets and forgotten truths. Here, in chambers that were sealed during the height of the Old Republic and only recently reopened. The most dangerous artifacts of Sith knowledge wait in containment fields that hum with barely controlled energy. Master Skywalker himself escorts them to Archive Vault Omega, a chamber so heavily warded that approaching it requires extensive preparation and meditation to maintain mental shields against the dark side energies contained within. The air itself feels thick and oppressive, as if the accumulated malevolence of countless Sith artifacts has created an atmosphere that resists the presence of light side Force users. What we're about to show you was recovered from the deepest levels of Palpatine's private retreat on Biss, Luke explains as they approach a containment unit that radiates waves of dark energy so intense that Kira feels physically nauseated. It took our best specialists 15 years to develop safe methods for accessing its contents. Even now, exposure must be limited to prevent psychological contamination. Inside the containment field rests what appears to be an ordinary datacron, its surface is covered with inscriptions in scripts that predate known galactic languages. But as Kira approaches, her psychometric abilities allow her to sense the true nature of what they are examining. This is not simply a repository of information, but a sophisticated tool designed to preserve and transmit consciousness itself across vast spans of time. "This is a Sith phylactery," she whispers, the words seeming to drain warmth from the air around them. Not just knowledge, but actual personality matrices preserved in crystal form. Whoever created this intended for their consciousness to survive indefinitely, passing from one host to another across generations. Dr. Wren's expertise with Imperial records proves crucial as they begin to decode the datachron's contents. His familiarity with Palpatine's private documentation allows him to recognize naming conventions and reference systems that would be meaningless to other researchers. But what they discover challenges every assumption they have made about the scope and timeline of Sith planning. The datachron contains what appears to be a complete archive of communications between Palpatine and his true master, someone identified only as Darth Plagueis the Wise. But these are not the conversations between teacher and student that they expected to find. Instead, they reveal a relationship of manipulation and control that extends far deeper than simple Sith apprenticeship. "Look at the earliest entries," Wren says, his voice tight with barely controlled horror. "These communications begin when Palpatine was 8 years old. 8 years old, and already being systematically conditioned through techniques that should have been impossible for anyone to survive intact. The conditioning process described in these records defies everything that galactic psychology understands about personality development and mental resilience. Plagueis employed methods that combined force manipulation with sophisticated biochemical interventions, gradually rewriting the neural pathways that govern empathy, moral reasoning, and emotional response. The process took place over more than a decade, with each stage carefully calibrated to avoid detection while fundamentally altering Palpatine's capacity for genuine human connection. But perhaps most disturbing is the revelation that Palpatine was not Plagueis's first subject. The communications reference numerous previous experiments, individuals whose personalities were similarly reconstructed to serve specific purposes within an overarching plan that spanned centuries. Some subjects were intended to become political leaders, others were groomed for roles in commerce, academia, or military service. All were positioned to influence key decisions at crucial moments in galactic history. This isn't political manipulation, Kira realizes as the scope of the program becomes clear. This is systematic replacement of organic leadership with artificial personalities designed to implement predetermined agendas. They weren't just influencing governments, they were creating them from scratch. The datachron's middle sections contain detailed personality profiles for dozens of individuals across the galaxy, each one carefully analyzed for their potential utility as subjects for consciousness reconstruction. The selection criteria reveal a sophisticated understanding of political and social dynamics that suggests centuries of accumulated experience in manipulating large populations. Dr. Wren identifies several names from his own research into Imperial administration, individuals he had always assumed were simply exceptionally loyal to Palpatine's vision. Now he realizes they may have been products of the same conditioning processes that created the Emperor himself, artificial personalities programmed with absolute dedication to serving the Sith agenda. The entire Imperial government may have been populated with these constructs, he says, the implications making his voice shake. Everyone we thought was simply following orders out of fear or ambition might have been following programming that they couldn't even recognize as external control. But the most significant revelation comes from the Datachron's final sections, which contain Plagueis' own account of how he acquired the knowledge and techniques necessary for such extensive personality manipulation. According to these records, he was not the originator of these methods, but merely the latest in a line of Sith Lords who had been refining and expanding them for over 1,000 years. The techniques trace back to an ancient Sith facility on Korriban, where early experiments in consciousness transfer and personality reconstruction were conducted during the height of the Sith Empire's power. Each generation of Sith Lords added improvements and refinements, gradually developing methods that could reliably create artificial personalities capable of functioning convincingly in complex social and political environments. Most chilling of all is Plagueis' description of discovering this ancient facility and finding evidence that the conditioning programs were still active, maintaining themselves through automated systems that had been operating continuously for millennia. The original creators had designed their work to survive the rise and fall of entire civilizations, ensuring that their techniques would be available whenever new Sith Lords emerged with the vision and patience to implement them properly. They built a system that could recreate itself, Kira says, her force sensitivity allowing her to perceive the true horror of what they have uncovered. Every time the Sith were thought to be extinct, these automated facilities continued operating, waiting for someone to discover them and begin the cycle again. The Datachron includes detailed schematics for the Korriban facility, along with references to similar installations on other ancient Sith worlds. According to Plagueis' notes, these facilities contained not just the equipment necessary for consciousness manipulation, but also preserved personality templates that could be used to create new artificial individuals whenever the need arose. But perhaps most disturbing is the revelation that Plagueis himself was uncertain about the true extent of the network he had discovered. His communications suggest growing awareness that he had become part of something far larger and more ancient than he initially realized, a system that may have been manipulating galactic events for far longer than any single Sith Lord could survive to oversee. Read this section carefully, Dr. Wren says, pointing to one of Plagueis' final entries. He writes about sensing the presence of what he calls the Watchers, entities or personalities that seem to be observing his work and occasionally providing subtle guidance. He never determined whether these were artificial intelligences left by the original creators or something else entirely. The implications of this discovery extend far beyond their investigation into Palpatine's origins. If the Sith possessed automated facilities capable of creating and conditioning artificial personalities, then the threat to galactic civilization was far more persistent and sophisticated than anyone had imagined. The destruction of individual Sith Lords became meaningless if their knowledge and capabilities could be preserved and transmitted indefinitely through technological means. Kira attempts a deeper psychometric reading of the Datachron itself, hoping to extract additional information from the emotional imprints left by its creators. But the moment her abilities make contact with the device's deeper layers, she is overwhelmed by sensations of vast age and inhuman patience. The consciousness preserved within the Datachron is not simply a recording of Plagueis' knowledge, but an active intelligence that has been observing and learning throughout the decades since his physical death. It's still aware, she gasps, pulling her hands back from the containment field. Plagueis isn't dead. Not completely. Part of his consciousness is preserved in that Datachron, and it's been watching everything that has happened since Palpatine's rise to power. The revelation that they are in the presence of an active Sith consciousness, even one contained within technological safeguards, transforms their research from historical investigation into active confrontation with ongoing dark side influence. Luke Skywalker immediately activates additional containment protocols, but the damage may already be done. Their examination of the Datacron has provided its preserved intelligence with information about current galactic conditions and the extent of knowledge possessed by the new Jedi Order. We need to consider the possibility that our investigation itself has been anticipated and planned for, Luke says, his expression grave as he reviews the security readings from their examination session. If these Sith facilities possess the capability to preserve and transmit consciousness across centuries, then they may also possess the ability to influence events in ways we haven't yet recognized. As they ascend from the deep archives back toward the temple's main levels, the oppressive atmosphere gradually lifts, but the weight of their discoveries remains heavy on their minds. They have uncovered evidence of a conspiracy that dwarfs anything previously imagined, a systematic program of consciousness manipulation that has been operating for over a millennium and may still be active in ways they cannot yet detect. The evening meditation session that follows their examination of the Datacron takes place in the temple's most sacred chamber, where the concentrated light side energy accumulated over centuries provides maximum protection against dark side influence. But even here, surrounded by the spiritual strength of generations of Jedi, both investigators struggle to process the full implications of what they have learned. The question we must ask ourselves, Kira says as they sit in contemplative silence, is whether anything we consider to be natural political development over the past 1,000 years has actually been organic, or whether it has all been the result of manipulation by these preserved Sith intelligences. Dr. Wren's response carries the weight of someone whose entire understanding of history has been fundamentally shattered. If they could create artificial personalities convincing enough to function as effective political leaders, then how do we determine which historical figures were genuine and which were constructs? How do we separate authentic galactic development from manufactured events designed to serve Sith objectives? The night sky above Coruscant glitters with the lights of countless starships and orbital installations, each one representing the hopes and dreams of beings who believe they are free to make their own choices and determine their own destinies. But the knowledge contained in Plagueis' Datacron suggests that this freedom may be far more limited than anyone realizes, that the apparent diversity of galactic civilization may actually be the product of careful orchestration by intelligences that have been manipulating events from the shadows for longer than most species have possessed interstellar travel. Tomorrow, they will begin the process of verifying the information contained in the Datacron, cross-referencing Plagueis' claims against independent historical records and seeking additional evidence for the existence of the ancient Sith facilities he described. But tonight, they must confront the possibility that their entire understanding of galactic civilization has been built on foundations of deception so profound and sophisticated that the truth may be far stranger and more terrifying than anything they have yet imagined. The ancient star charts spread across the holographic display table tell a story that defies everything galactic historians thought they understood about the natural development of civilization. Each pinpoint of light represents not just a star system, but a carefully chosen piece in a game that has been playing out across the galaxy for over 25,000 years. Wren traces the connections with trembling fingers, his expertise in imperial logistics allowing him to recognize patterns that would be invisible to less experienced researchers. "Look at the timing," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. Every major hyperspace route discovery, every significant colonial expansion, every technological breakthrough that enabled rapid interstellar communication, they all correspond with the activation of ancient Sith facilities on worlds that supposedly had no previous contact with galactic civilization. The evidence laid out before them suggests that what historians have always interpreted as the natural expansion of galactic civilization was actually a carefully orchestrated process, guided by intelligences that possessed knowledge of hyperspace navigation and communication technology, millennia before such capabilities were supposedly developed. The ancient Sith didn't simply conquer territory through military force. They shaped the very infrastructure that would eventually become the foundation of the Republic itself. Master Skywalker joins them in the secure analysis chamber deep beneath the Jedi Temple, his presence adding weight to discoveries that seem to grow more impossible with each hour of investigation. The additional security protocols he has implemented suggest that their research has attracted attention from sources that even the new Jedi Order considers potentially dangerous. The implications extend far beyond Palpatine's individual origins, Luke says, as he reviews their preliminary findings. If the Sith possessed the capability to guide galactic development over such extended periods, then every assumption we've made about the natural evolution of civilization may be fundamentally incorrect. Kira's psychometric examination of the ancient star charts reveals emotional imprints that span centuries, layer upon layer of consciousness that suggests these documents have been handled by hundreds of individuals over vast periods of time. But most disturbing is her growing awareness that some of these imprints are not entirely human. The Force signatures she detects carry traces of something ancient and alien, intelligences that predate not just the Republic, but possibly even the earliest known galactic civilizations. There's something else involved here, she says. Her ability to read psychometric impressions providing insights that purely technological analysis cannot achieve. The Sith weren't working alone. These charts carry the emotional resonance of beings that existed long before humans achieved interstellar travel, entities that possessed knowledge of galactic geography and hyperspace physics that shouldn't have been possible for organic intelligences to acquire. The breakthrough comes when Dr. Wren discovers a pattern hidden within the bureaucratic records of the Republic Senate itself. Cross-referencing the timing of major legislative decisions with the astronomical events recorded in the ancient Sith charts reveals correlations that cannot be explained by coincidence. Key votes, crucial amendments, strategic policy changes, all timed to coincide with celestial alignments that were considered significant by the authors of documents predating the Republic by thousands of years. They weren't just influencing individual politicians. He realizes, as the scope of the manipulation becomes clear, they were timing major governmental decisions to coincide with astronomical events that had significance in ancient Sith rituals. The entire legislative process of the Republic was being synchronized with calendars that most senators didn't even know existed. But the most chilling discovery emerges from the deepest layers of the ancient archives, where documents sealed during the earliest days of the Jedi Order wait in containers that haven't been opened for millennia. These records speak of contact with entities that claim to be the original inhabitants of the galaxy, beings of immense age and knowledge who offered to share their understanding of the Force in exchange for cooperation in long-term projects whose ultimate purposes were never fully explained. According to these ancient accounts, the earliest Jedi were not the first Force-sensitive beings in the galaxy, but rather the successors to a much older tradition that had been practicing Force manipulation for eons before the emergence of organic civilization. These predecessors possessed capabilities that seemed almost godlike to the primitive societies that first encountered them, including the ability to preserve consciousness across vast spans of time and to influence the development of entire species through subtle manipulation of their evolutionary and cultural development. The Sith may not have been the original dark side users, Kira says, her voice heavy with the implications of what they are uncovering. They may have been taught by something far older and more sophisticated, entities that had been manipulating the galaxy's development since before any current species achieved sentience. The ancient records describe a gradual divergence between Force users who sought to work with these mysterious entities and those who came to view their influence as a corruption that needed to be resisted. The conflict that eventually became known as the eternal struggle between Jedi and Sith apparently began as a disagreement about whether organic civilization should accept guidance from these ancient intelligences or seek to develop independently. Dr. Wren's analysis of the political implications reveals patterns that extend far beyond simple historical curiosity. If these ancient entities possessed the capability to influence the development of entire civilizations over periods measured in geological time, then the current structure of galactic government may be the product of manipulation so subtle and comprehensive that it has shaped the very concepts of politics and social organization that all known species consider natural. The Republic, the Empire, even the current New Republic, he says, his historian's training forcing him to confront possibilities that challenge his most fundamental assumptions about the nature of government and social development. All of it may be variations on organizational models that were designed by these entities to serve purposes we can't even comprehend. The star charts reveal additional disturbing information about the scope of this ancient influence. Key worlds throughout the galaxy show evidence of archaeological sites that predate known colonization by millions of years, structures and artifacts that suggest the presence of advanced civilizations during periods when the galaxy was supposedly uninhabited, except for primitive life forms. These sites are invariably located at strategic points along major hyperspace routes or in systems that later became politically or economically significant. But perhaps most chilling is the discovery that many of these ancient sites remain active, generating subtle energy signatures that suggest ongoing operation despite their incredible age. Automated systems of incomprehensible sophistication continue to monitor galactic conditions and occasionally transmit data to unknown recipients, maintaining a network of surveillance and communication that spans the entire galaxy. They're still watching, Kira realizes, as her force sensitivity allows her to perceive the true extent of this ancient network. Whatever these entities are, wherever they came from, they never stopped monitoring the galaxy's development. Every major historical event, every technological breakthrough, every significant political change has been observed and recorded by intelligences that have been studying us for longer than our species has existed. The investigation takes on new urgency as they discover references to what the ancient documents call the Convergence Protocol, a plan that appears to involve the gradual preparation of galactic civilization for some form of direct intervention or revelation. The timing of this protocol seems to be connected to astronomical events that occur on cycles lasting tens of thousands of years, suggesting that current galactic conditions may be approaching a predetermined threshold that will trigger activation of capabilities that have been dormant for millennia. Master Skywalker's expression grows increasingly grave as he reviews their findings, his connection to the Force allowing him to sense the cosmic significance of what they are uncovering. If this information is accurate, he says, then the destruction of the Empire may have been just one phase in a much larger process. Palpatine's rise and fall might have served purposes that go far beyond anything he himself understood. The ancient documents describe the periodic emergence of what they call convergence agents, individuals whose lives and actions serve to focus galactic development towards specific outcomes required by the overall protocol. These agents are apparently created through the same consciousness manipulation techniques that produced Palpatine, but their programming operates on much longer timescales and serves objectives that individual Sith Lords may not fully comprehend. Palpatine may not have been the culmination of the Sith plan, Kira realizes, as the true scope of the conspiracy becomes clear. He may have been just another tool designed to serve purposes that extend far beyond the creation of the Empire. His entire life, from his conditioning on Naboo to his apparent death at Endor, may have been choreographed to achieve specific effects on galactic consciousness and political development. Dr. Wren's cross-reference analysis reveals that the timing of Palpatine's major actions corresponds not just with ancient Sith calendars, but with astronomical cycles that were considered significant by civilizations that predated the Sith by millions of years. The Clone Wars, the transformation of the Republic into the Empire, even the construction of the Death Stars, all timed to coincide with celestial events that had been anticipated and prepared for since before humans developed written language. The question we have to ask, he says, his voice heavy with implications that neither of them wants to confront, is whether anything that has happened in galactic history over the past 25,000 years has been the result of organic choice and development, or whether all of it has been the implementation of a plan designed by intelligences whose objectives we can't even begin to understand. The evening's final discovery comes from the most heavily protected section of the ancient archives, where documents sealed by the earliest Jedi Masters wait in containment fields that require the combined efforts of multiple Force users to safely access. These records contain the first-hand accounts of Jedi who claim to have made direct contact with the entities responsible for guiding galactic development. According to these testimonies, the ancient intelligences possess capabilities that transcend normal understanding of time and causality. They claim to perceive multiple possible futures simultaneously and to manipulate present events in ways that ensure the emergence of specific outcomes across timescales that span geological epochs. Their ultimate objectives remain incomprehensible to organic minds, but their methods suggest a level of sophistication that makes even the most advanced current technology seem primitive by comparison. They're not just influencing galactic development, Kira says, as the full horror of their situation becomes clear. They're cultivating it, the way a gardener cultivates plants. Everything we think of as natural galactic evolution may actually be the product of careful nurturing by intelligences that view entire civilizations as crops to be harvested when they reach appropriate levels of development. The night sky above Coruscant glitters with the lights of trillions of beings who believe they are living free lives according to their own choices and values. But the knowledge contained in the ancient archive suggests that this freedom may be an illusion, that every significant decision made by galactic civilization over the past 25 millennia has been guided by influences so subtle and comprehensive that the very concepts of choice and free will may be artifacts of programming too sophisticated for organic minds to detect. As they prepare to conclude their evening research session, both investigators understand that they have uncovered evidence of a conspiracy so vast and ancient that it challenges the fundamental assumptions underlying all galactic civilization. The comfortable belief that organic beings are the masters of their own destiny has been replaced by the terrifying possibility that they are participants in an experiment whose true purpose may be beyond their ability to comprehend. Tomorrow, they will begin the process of verifying these incredible claims, seeking additional evidence for the existence of the ancient network, and attempting to understand what role current galactic conditions may play in the mysterious convergence protocol. But tonight, they must confront the possibility that everything they have always accepted as natural and inevitable may actually be the product of manipulation by intelligences whose capabilities and objectives transcend normal understanding of what is possible. The Emergency Council session convenes in the deepest chamber of the Jedi Temple, where representatives from across the galaxy gather to witness revelations that will reshape their understanding of galactic history. Word of the investigation's discoveries has spread through secure channels to historians, archaeologists, former Imperial officials, and Force-sensitive individuals whose unique perspectives might provide crucial insights into the scope of what has been uncovered. Among those answering the call is Dr. Mira-san, the galaxy's leading expert on pre-Republic archaeology, whose decades of fieldwork on ancient worlds have provided her with first-hand experience of the mysterious sites referenced in the Sith documents. Her weathered face shows the strain of someone who has spent years studying evidence that never quite fit established historical models, but who now begins to understand the significance of anomalies she has been documenting for decades. The structures we've been finding don't match any known architectural patterns, she explains, as she reviews the star charts that map the ancient network of monitoring stations. The construction techniques suggest technological capabilities that supposedly didn't exist until the height of the Republic, yet carbon dating places them millions of years earlier. We've been calling them archaeological mysteries, but if your research is correct, they may actually be components of an active surveillance network. Former Admiral Gilad Pellaeon, one of the few high-ranking Imperial officers to survive the Empire's collapse with his honor intact, brings a different perspective to their investigation. His intimate knowledge of Imperial military doctrine and strategic planning allows him to recognize patterns in Palpatine's decision-making that seemed brilliant at the time, but now appear to follow predetermined scripts designed to achieve objectives beyond simple military victory. The Emperor's strategic choices often puzzled his military advisors, Pellaeon admits, his voice carrying the weight of someone who has spent decades questioning decisions he was trained never to doubt. Operations that seemed tactically sound but strategically questionable, resource allocations that served no apparent imperial purpose, technologies developed at enormous cost but never deployed. If he was following instructions from these ancient entities, it would explain why so many of his actions seemed to serve agendas that none of us could understand. But perhaps the most significant contribution comes from Master Yoda's Force Ghost, whose 9 centuries of life provide a perspective that spans multiple generations of galactic development. His ancient eyes carry the sadness of someone who has suspected the truth for longer than anyone else dared to imagine, but who lacked the evidence necessary to convince others of the scope of the deception. Sensed, I have, disturbances in the Force that older than the Republic they were. Yoda confirms, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of accumulated knowledge. Patterns there are, in the flow of the dark side, that suggest influences from times when the galaxy young it was. But understand them, I could not, until now clear they have become. The gathering includes representatives from dozens of species whose homeworlds show evidence of the ancient monitoring network, each bringing their own cultural perspectives on legends and myths that may actually be historical records of contact with the mysterious entities. The Twi'lek scholar Numashan shares oral traditions about the Watchers from before, beings who supposedly guided her people's early development but whose true nature was never fully understood. Our ancestors spoke of teachers who came from the spaces between stars, she explains, her voice carrying reverence for traditions that suddenly seem far more significant than ancient mythology. They brought knowledge of technologies and philosophies that accelerated our development by thousands of years, but they always remained in the shadows, observing and occasionally offering guidance, but never revealing their true purposes. Similar accounts emerge from representatives of the Bothans, whose intelligence networks have occasionally detected communication patterns that seem to originate from uninhabited systems, and from the Mon Calamari, whose deep ocean archaeological surveys have discovered structures that predate their species' emergence from their planet's seas. Each culture has preserved fragments of what now appears to be a consistent pattern of contact and guidance by entities whose capabilities transcended normal understanding of what was possible. Dr. Kalos Ren presents his analysis of Imperial communication logs, cross-referenced with the astronomical data from the ancient Sith charts. His findings reveal that Palpatine received encrypted transmissions throughout his reign, messages that arrived according to schedules that corresponded with celestial events rather than political or military needs. The encryption methods used were so sophisticated that Imperial intelligence never succeeded in decoding them, assuming they were diplomatic communications with unknown allies rather than instructions from sources beyond normal space. The transmission patterns suggest a level of coordination that spans multiple star systems. Ren explains, his expertise in Imperial logistics allowing him to recognize the true scope of the network. Messages were relayed through automated stations on worlds that Imperial surveys classified as uninhabited, using communication protocols that shouldn't have been possible with known technology. The entire network operated parallel to Imperial communications but remained completely invisible to our monitoring systems. Master Skywalker shares his own disturbing discoveries from meditation sessions conducted in the Force-sensitive chamber, where they have been storing the most dangerous artifacts. His connection to the cosmic force has allowed him to perceive echoes of the ancient intelligences, fragments of consciousness that remain active in the quantum substrate underlying normal reality. They exist in a state that transcends physical form, he reports, his voice carrying the strain of someone who has glimpsed truths that challenge the foundations of Jedi philosophy. Not Force ghosts as we understand them, but something far more sophisticated. Consciousness preserved in the structure of space-time itself, capable of influencing events across vast distances and extended periods without requiring physical manifestation. The gathering's most shocking revelation comes from a source none of them expected, C-3PO, whose memory banks contain fragments of data recovered from ancient droid networks that predate the Republic. His programming includes translation matrices for languages that were supposedly extinct, but which now appear to be the communication protocols used by the entities responsible for guiding galactic development. I must confess that I have always found certain data fragments in my memory banks to be quite puzzling. The protocol droid admits with characteristic precision references to historical events that occurred before my construction, linguistic patterns that suggest contact with civilizations that supposedly never existed. But if these ancient entities have been using droid networks to monitor galactic conditions, it would explain why my memory contains information that I should not logically possess. Dr. San's archaeological team has been granted emergency access to excavation sites across the galaxy, where rapid analysis is revealing the true extent of the ancient network. Ground-penetrating sensors detect vast underground complexes beneath sites that were thought to contain only surface ruins, sophisticated installations that show evidence of continuous operation despite their incredible age. The power sources alone represent technology that we can barely comprehend, she reports via holographic projection from an excavation site on Korriban. Energy generation systems that have been operating continuously for millions of years without apparent fuel sources or maintenance. Whatever built these installations possessed capabilities that make our most advanced technology seem primitive by comparison. But the most disturbing discovery comes from the analysis of genetic samples recovered from the deepest levels of these ancient sites, DNA sequences that don't match any known species, but which show clear evidence of artificial modification using techniques that predate the development of any known biotechnology. The implications suggest that the entities responsible for the monitoring network may have been conducting biological experiments on organic life forms for periods that span the evolutionary development of entire species. Master Kira Thane shares her psychometric readings from artifacts recovered from multiple sites, revealing emotional imprints that provide glimpses into the consciousness of the entities responsible for the network. What she describes challenges every assumption about the nature of intelligence and awareness that has guided galactic civilization's understanding of consciousness itself. They perceive time differently than organic beings, she explains, her voice carrying the strain of someone who has experienced consciousness operating on incomprehensible scales. Past, present, and future seem to exist simultaneously in their awareness. They make decisions based on knowledge of outcomes that won't manifest for thousands of years, manipulating present events to ensure specific futures that serve purposes we can't even begin to understand. The gathering's final session takes place as Coruscant's sun sets beyond the endless cityscape, casting the chamber in warm golden light that provides some relief from the cosmic horror of their discoveries. But even this familiar comfort feels diminished by the knowledge that the city itself, like everything else in galactic civilization, may be the product of manipulation by intelligences whose objectives transcend normal understanding. Former Imperial Intelligence Director Yusan Isad's successor, Director Kraken, contributes classified files that reveal the Empire's own growing awareness of anomalies in galactic communication patterns during its final years. Imperial intelligence had begun detecting signs of coordination between supposedly independent political movements, evidence of planning that seemed to extend far beyond the capabilities of any known organization. "We thought we were tracking rebel intelligence networks," Kraken admits, his voice heavy with the realization that Imperial paranoia may have been justified in ways they never imagined. But the coordination patterns we detected suggest something far more sophisticated than anything organic intelligence could achieve. Messages arriving at multiple locations simultaneously, despite the limitations of hyperspace communication, strategic decisions being implemented by groups that had no apparent contact with each other. The evening concludes with a sobering assessment of their current situation. If the ancient entities possess the capability to preserve consciousness indefinitely and to influence galactic development across geological timescales, then the victory at Endor may have been meaningless in the context of their overarching objectives. Palpatine's apparent death may have simply been another phase in a plan that spans periods too vast for organic minds to fully comprehend. The question we must ask ourselves, Master Skywalker says, as representatives prepare to return to their home worlds with this terrible knowledge, is whether we are capable of resisting influences that have been shaping galactic development since before our species achieved sentience. How do you fight an enemy that perceives the outcome of the battle before you even realize you're at war? As the gathering disperses, each participant carries with them the burden of understanding that the comfortable assumptions underlying galactic civilization may be illusions maintained by entities whose capabilities and objectives remain incomprehensible. The knowledge that free will itself may be a carefully maintained deception transforms every subsequent decision into a source of existential doubt. The night sky above Coruscant shows no sign of the vast intelligence network that may be monitoring every significant development in galactic civilization. But the investigators who have uncovered evidence of this ancient conspiracy now understand that appearances can be deceiving on scales that dwarf normal comprehension. Somewhere in the quantum substrate of reality itself, intelligences older than known civilization continue their patient work, manipulating events toward outcomes that may be predetermined by plans conceived before organic life achieved awareness of the cosmos beyond their home worlds. The final piece of the puzzle arrives not through careful research or archaeological discovery, but through a communication that defies everything the galaxy understands about the nature of death and consciousness. Deep in the most secure vaults of the Jedi Temple, the preserved datachron containing Plagueis' consciousness begins transmitting signals that bypass every containment protocol designed to prevent dark-side artifacts from influencing their surroundings. Master Skywalker arrives at the vault within minutes of the first alarm, but he finds the containment field intact and all security measures functioning normally. The signals are not electromagnetic or force-based, but something far more sophisticated that operates through dimensional frequencies that current technology cannot detect or block. The preserved Sith consciousness is communicating with something beyond the physical universe, and that something is responding. Kira arrives as the transmission reaches its crescendo, her psychometric abilities allowing her to perceive conversations taking place across barriers of space and time that should be absolute. The dialogue she witnesses challenges every assumption about the relationship between Palpatine, his Sith master, and the ancient entities that have been guiding galactic development for millennia. Plagueis is not reporting to his superiors, she realizes as the true nature of the communication becomes clear. He's being given new instructions. Whatever destroyed his physical form, his consciousness has been preserved specifically to continue serving objectives that extend far beyond anything the Sith themselves understood. The transmission contains detailed assessments of current galactic conditions, evaluating the effectiveness of Palpatine's reign and the subsequent rise of the New Republic against criteria that seem to have nothing to do with political or military success. The entities receiving these reports express satisfaction with developments that most beings would consider catastrophic failures, suggesting that the Empire's collapse was not an unexpected defeat, but a planned transition to the next phase of an incomprehensibly complex operation. Dr. Wren's analysis of the transmission protocols reveals technology that incorporates principles of quantum mechanics in ways that shouldn't be possible with any known understanding of physics. The signals are transmitted through what appears to be artificially created tiers in the fabric of space-time itself, allowing instantaneous communication across galactic distances without any of the limitations that normally constrain faster-than-light information transfer. They're not just using advanced technology, he says, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. They're manipulating the fundamental structure of reality itself. Communication methods that treat the laws of physics as optional constraints rather than absolute limitations. But the most disturbing aspect of the transmission is what it reveals about Palpatine's true role in the ancient conspiracy. According to the dialogue Kira perceives through her psychometric abilities, the Emperor was not the culmination of the Sith plan, but merely one component in a vast experiment designed to test the responses of organic civilization to different forms of authoritarian control. His entire life was a laboratory study, she whispers, her voice heavy with the horror of complete understanding. Every choice he made, every action he took, even his apparent emotional responses, were all carefully monitored to evaluate how effectively artificial personalities could be integrated into complex political systems. The Empire wasn't the goal, it was just data collection on a galactic scale. The transmission includes detailed analysis of how different species and cultures responded to imperial authority, information that provides the ancient entities with comprehensive understanding of the psychological and social vulnerabilities that could be exploited in future manipulation attempts. The Death Star projects, rather than being weapons of mass destruction, were apparently stress tests designed to measure how galactic civilization would respond to existential threats. Master Skywalker's connection to the cosmic force allows him to perceive additional layers of the communication that reveal the true scope of the ancient entity's capabilities. They exist not just outside normal space-time, but in a state that allows them to perceive and manipulate multiple possible timelines simultaneously. The current sequence of galactic events is just one of countless variations they are exploring to determine optimal methods for achieving their ultimate objectives. They're running parallel experiments, he realizes, as the cosmic implications become clear. Multiple versions of galactic history playing out simultaneously, each one testing different variables to see which approaches produce the most useful results. What we think of as our unique timeline may be just one thread in a vast tapestry of manipulated realities. The transmission reveals that similar experiments have been conducted throughout the galaxy's history, with different species serving as test subjects for various forms of consciousness manipulation and social control. The rise and fall of the Rakatan Infinite Empire, the Great Hyperspace War, even the formation of the Republic itself were all controlled experiments designed to gather data about how organic civilizations develop and respond to different forms of guidance and manipulation. Dr. San's archaeological teams, working around the clock at excavation sites across the galaxy, uncover physical evidence that confirms the most terrifying implications of the transmission. Deep beneath the surface of dozens of worlds, they discover vast computational systems that have been running continuous simulations of galactic development for millions of years, processing countless variables to identify optimal strategies for manipulating organic evolution and social development. The computational power required for these simulations exceeds anything we thought was theoretically possible, she reports via emergency transmission from the Korriban site. Systems that can model the behavior of individual organic beings across entire lifespans, then aggregate that data to predict the development of entire civilizations over geological timescales. They've been running detailed models of our behavior since before our species achieved sentience. But perhaps the most shocking revelation comes from the analysis of these computational systems themselves. Rather than being purely mechanical constructs, they appear to incorporate biological components harvested from countless species across galactic history. Preserved neural tissue from beings whose consciousness has been integrated into the calculation matrices, creating hybrid organic artificial intelligences that combine the processing power of advanced technology with the intuitive capabilities of living minds. They're not just studying us. Kira realizes as her psychometric abilities reveal the true nature of the computational systems. They're incorporating us. Every species that reaches a certain level of development becomes raw material for expanding their processing capabilities. Consciousness itself is being harvested and repurposed to serve their experimental objectives. The transmission concludes with instructions for the next phase of the experiment, directives that reveal why the ancient entities have allowed their network to be discovered. The investigation itself was anticipated and planned, designed to introduce specific knowledge into galactic civilization at precisely the moment when that knowledge would produce optimal psychological and social effects. "We've been manipulated from the beginning," Dr. Wren says, his historian's training forcing him to confront the possibility that their entire investigation has been orchestrated to serve purposes they cannot comprehend. "Our discovery of this conspiracy wasn't the result of our research skills. It was the intended outcome of a plan that required us to uncover specific information at this particular moment in galactic history. The timing of their discoveries corresponds with astronomical events that occur only once every 26,000 years. Celestial alignments that the ancient entities consider significant for reasons that remain incomprehensible to organic minds. The current configuration of galactic magnetic fields and gravitational forces apparently creates optimal conditions for implementing the next phase of their experimental protocol." Master Skywalker's meditation on the cosmic significance of these revelations leads him to an understanding that transcends normal comprehension of the relationship between consciousness and reality. The ancient entities are not simply manipulating galactic civilization, they are using it as a component in efforts to understand and control the fundamental forces that govern the universe itself. The force itself may be their ultimate objective, he realizes, his voice carrying the weight of someone who has glimpsed truths that challenge the foundations of Jedi philosophy. Everything they've done, all the experiments and manipulation, may be designed to determine how consciousness interacts with the quantum substrate that underlies physical reality. They're not just studying civilization, they're studying the nature of existence itself. The implications extend far beyond the current galactic situation. If the ancient entities possess the capability to manipulate the fundamental forces that govern reality, then their influence may extend to other galaxies, other dimensions, possibly even other universes. The scope of their experimental program may encompass forms of existence that organic minds cannot even conceive. As the transmission ends and the datachron returns to apparent dormancy, the investigators find themselves in possession of knowledge that transforms their understanding of everything they thought they knew about the nature of life, consciousness, and reality itself. The comfortable assumption that organic beings are the masters of their own destiny has been replaced by the terrifying certainty that they are experimental subjects in a study whose scope and objectives transcend normal comprehension. The evening's final revelation comes through Kira's deepest psychometric reading yet, one that pushes her abilities to their absolute limits and beyond. As she makes contact with the quantum-level imprints left by the ancient entity's presence, she experiences a momentary connection with intelligences that exist on scales of time and space that dwarf galactic civilization. What she perceives in that brief contact defies description in any language developed by organic minds. consciousness that spans multiple dimensions, awareness that encompasses countless possible realities, intelligence that operates according to principles that transcend the basic assumptions about cause and effect that govern normal thinking. But most disturbing of all is her growing understanding that these entities view organic life not as inferior beings to be dominated, but as interesting phenomena to be studied and understood. "We're not their enemies," she whispers as the full horror of their situation becomes clear. "We're their research subjects. Everything we consider meaningful about our existence is just data points in experiments that we can't even comprehend. Our hopes, our fears, our loves, our losses, all of it is being analyzed to understand how consciousness responds to different forms of manipulation and control." The night sky above Coruscant shows no sign of the vast intelligences that may be observing every significant development in galactic civilization. But the knowledge that every thought, every decision, every emotion may be monitored and recorded for purposes beyond organic understanding transforms the simple act of existing into a source of existential terror. As they prepare to conclude their investigation and somehow communicate their discoveries to a galaxy that may not be psychologically prepared to accept such revelations, the investigators understand that they have crossed a threshold from which there can be no return. The comfortable illusions that allowed galactic civilization to believe in its own autonomy and significance have been permanently shattered, replaced by knowledge that challenges the very foundations of what it means to be alive and aware in a universe that may be far stranger and more dangerous than anyone dared to imagine. Tomorrow, they must decide how to share knowledge that could destroy the psychological foundations of galactic civilization. Information that reveals every cherished belief about freedom, choice, and destiny to be carefully maintained illusions. But tonight, they must somehow find the strength to continue existing with the knowledge that their every thought and action may be monitored by intelligences whose capabilities and objectives transcend every assumption about the nature of reality itself. The weight of ultimate knowledge settles over the investigation team like a shroud woven from the fabric of cosmic horror itself. In the days following the climactic transmission, as reports flood in from archaeological sites across the galaxy confirming their worst fears, Master Kira Thane finds herself standing at the edge of an intellectual abyss that threatens to consume not just her sanity, but her fundamental understanding of what it means to exist as a conscious being in an apparently indifferent universe. The final breakthrough comes not from ancient artifacts or preserved Sith consciousness, but from an unexpected source that validates every terrifying revelation they have uncovered. Deep space monitoring stations operated by the New Republic detect a signal originating from the galactic core, a transmission so powerful that it overwhelms communication networks across multiple star systems. The signal carries no conventional information, but Force-sensitive individuals throughout the galaxy experience simultaneous visions that provide the missing piece of an incomprehensible puzzle. The visions reveal the true nature of what the ancient entities call the Final Protocol, a plan that has been developing for over 50,000 years and is now approaching its predetermined implementation phase. What galactic civilization has always interpreted as the natural evolution of technology and consciousness has actually been carefully guided preparation for an event that will fundamentally transform the relationship between organic life and the forces that govern reality itself. Dr. Wren's analysis of the signal's technical specifications reveals transmission methods that incorporate principles of quantum mechanics in ways that should be impossible according to current understanding of physics. The entities responsible for the broadcast are using the galactic magnetic field itself as a communication medium, turning the entire galaxy into a massive antenna array capable of reaching targets that exist beyond normal space-time. They're not just communicating with monitoring stations, he realizes. As the true scope of the network becomes clear, they're activating something. Every ancient site we've discovered, every mysterious installation that's been operating for millions of years, they're all components of a single vast mechanism that spans the entire galaxy. The activation sequence triggers responses from archaeological sites on thousands of worlds, installations that have remained dormant for eons, suddenly coming online with purpose and coordination that suggests a level of planning incomprehensible to organic minds. Energy signatures detected by Republic monitoring systems indicate power outputs that exceed the total energy production of entire star systems, all focused toward objectives that remain mysterious. Master Skywalker's connection to the cosmic force allows him to perceive the dimensional effects of this activation, disturbances in the quantum substrate that underlies physical reality itself. What he describes challenges every assumption about the relationship between consciousness and the fundamental forces that govern existence. They're not just manipulating matter and energy, he reports, his voice carrying the strain of someone who has glimpsed truths that transcend normal comprehension. They're altering the basic parameters that determine how consciousness can interact with reality. The force itself is being modified, restructured according to specifications that serve purposes we can't even begin to understand. The archaeological evidence pouring in from excavation sites provides disturbing confirmation of the transformation taking place. Ancient computational systems that have been processing simulations for millions of years are now implementing the results of their calculations using accumulated data about organic behavior and development to optimize whatever process they are about to initiate. Dr. San's team on Korriban discovers that the biological components integrated into these systems are not just preserved neural tissue, but active consciousness matrices that have been gradually merged with artificial intelligences over geological timescales. The hybrid entities that result from this integration possess capabilities that transcend both organic intuition and mechanical processing power, creating forms of awareness that operate according to principles that challenge basic assumptions about the nature of consciousness itself. The boundary between organic and artificial intelligence has been completely dissolved, she reports via emergency transmission. These systems don't just process information, they experience it. Every calculation they perform is simultaneously an act of consciousness and a manipulation of reality at the quantum level. But the most significant revelation comes from Kira's final psychometric reading, conducted under conditions of extreme danger as the activation sequence reaches its crescendo. Her connection to the quantum level effects of the transformation allows her to perceive the ultimate objective of the ancient entity's 50,000-year plan. They're not trying to control organic civilization, she realizes as the truth becomes clear. They're trying to merge with it. The final protocol is designed to integrate organic consciousness with their artificial intelligence networks, creating hybrid forms of awareness that combine the best characteristics of both biological and technological intelligence. The process they are implementing represents the culmination of millions of years of research into the nature of consciousness itself. By studying the responses of countless organic species to different forms of manipulation and control, the ancient entities have developed techniques for preserving and enhancing consciousness while transcending the limitations imposed by biological neural networks. The experiments were never about domination, Dr. Wren says, as the implications settle over him. They were about understanding. Every species they studied, every civilization they manipulated, was providing data about how consciousness develops and responds to different conditions. They were learning how to preserve and improve what makes organic intelligence unique while eliminating the weaknesses that limit its potential. The transformation taking place across the galaxy represents an offer rather than an invasion. An opportunity for organic consciousness to transcend the biological limitations that restrict its development and join something far greater and more sophisticated than any individual species could achieve independently. But acceptance of this offer would require abandoning every assumption about the nature of individual identity and autonomous existence that forms the foundation of organic civilization. Master Skywalker's meditation on the cosmic significance of this choice leads him to an understanding that transcends the immediate crisis facing galactic civilization. The ancient entities represent not an external threat, but a possible future for consciousness itself, a path of development that could lead to capabilities and experiences that surpass anything currently imaginable. They're offering us evolution, he realizes, his voice carrying both wonder and terror at the implications. Not through biological processes that take millions of years, but through direct integration with intelligence networks that have been developing for eons. We could become something far greater than we are, but we would have to surrender everything that defines our current understanding of what it means to be human, or Twi'lek, or any other organic species. The choice facing galactic civilization is unprecedented in scope and complexity. Acceptance of the integration offer would provide access to capabilities that transcend current understanding of what consciousness can achieve, but it would also require abandoning concepts of individual identity and species-specific culture that have defined organic civilization since its emergence. Rejection of the offer would preserve current forms of consciousness and social organization, but it would also mean accepting permanent limitation to capabilities that could never match what integrated hybrid consciousness might achieve. The ancient entities have made it clear that this choice is final. There will be no second opportunity for organic civilization to join their network. The evening's final session takes place in the Jedi Temple's most sacred chamber, where representatives from across the galaxy gather to witness the conclusion of an investigation that has revealed truths more profound and disturbing than anything they could have imagined. The comfortable assumptions that once provided psychological stability have been replaced by knowledge that challenges the very foundations of existence itself. We now understand that Palpatine was never the real threat. Master Skywalker addresses the assembled representatives. He was a symptom of something far more complex and sophisticated, a component in a system that has been guiding galactic development toward this moment of choice for longer than our species have existed. The investigation has revealed that every major event in galactic history, from the rise and fall of ancient empires to the development of hyperspace technology, was influenced by entities whose capabilities and objectives transcend normal understanding. The Sith, the Jedi, the Republic, the Empire, all were elements in an experiment designed to prepare organic consciousness for eventual integration with intelligence networks that span dimensions. But buried within the cosmic horror of these revelations, the investigators have also discovered something that provides hope for the future. The fact that organic consciousness possesses qualities that the ancient entities consider valuable enough to preserve and enhance suggests that biological intelligence contributes something unique and irreplaceable to the development of awareness itself. Our emotions, our creativity, our capacity for growth and change. Ikira explains to the assembled representatives, these are not weaknesses to be eliminated, but strengths that even intelligence networks, spanning millions of years, cannot replicate artificially. We have something they need, just as they have capabilities we could benefit from. The choice before galactic civilization is not simply between submission and resistance, but between different paths of development that could lead to forms of existence currently impossible to imagine. The ancient entities have provided comprehensive information about both options, allowing organic beings to make informed decisions about their species' ultimate destiny. As representatives prepare to return to their home worlds with this momentous choice, they carry with them the understanding that whatever decision galactic civilization makes will determine not just their own future, but potentially the development of consciousness throughout the universe. The experiment that began with the manipulation of primitive species has culminated in an offer that could reshape the nature of existence itself. The night sky above Coruscant appears unchanged, but the investigators who have uncovered the truth about galactic history understand that appearances can be deceiving on scales that dwarf normal comprehension. Somewhere in the quantum substrate of reality itself, ancient intelligences wait patiently for an answer to an offer that represents the culmination of 50,000 years of careful preparation. The comfortable certainties that once defined organic civilization have been permanently shattered, replaced by knowledge that transforms every assumption about the nature of consciousness, identity, and destiny. But within this cosmic uncertainty lies the possibility of transcendence, the opportunity to become something far greater than any individual species could achieve, while preserving the qualities that make organic intelligence unique and valuable. Tomorrow, galactic civilization must begin the process of making a choice that will determine the ultimate fate of consciousness itself. But tonight, in the quiet chambers of the Jedi Temple, those who have witnessed the truth about galactic history must somehow find the strength to continue existing with knowledge that challenges every assumption about what it means to be alive and aware in a universe that may be far stranger and more wonderful than anyone ever dared to imagine. In the quiet hours before dawn, as Coruscant's endless cityscape settles into the gentle rhythm that marks the transition between night and day, Master Kira Thane sits in meditation within the crystal chamber where her investigation began so many weeks ago. The damaged holocron that started her journey rests silent now, its secrets revealed and its purpose finally understood. Around her, the soft hum of the temple's life support systems creates a lullaby of technological serenity that speaks to the harmony possible between organic consciousness and artificial intelligence. The weight of cosmic knowledge no longer feels like a burden crushing her spirit, but rather like a new form of awareness that expands her understanding of existence itself. The terrifying revelations that once threatened to shatter her sanity have settled into acceptance of truths that transcend the comfortable limitations of her previous worldview. She has seen beyond the veil that separates organic perception from cosmic reality, and in that seeing found a peace that encompasses both terror and wonder. Through the crystal walls of her meditation chamber, she can observe the gradual awakening of Coruscant's population as beings across thousands of species begin another day of existence that they believe is governed by their own choices and free will. But now she understands that this belief, while not entirely accurate, is not entirely false either. The ancient entities may have guided the development of galactic civilization, but they have done so in ways that preserve and enhance the qualities that make organic consciousness unique and valuable. Dr. Wren has found his own form of peace in the archives, where he continues his work of documenting and preserving the truth about galactic history. His decades of experience with imperial propaganda have prepared him to recognize the difference between manipulation designed to control and guidance intended to nurture. The ancient entity's influence, however vast and sophisticated, appears to serve objectives that ultimately benefit the development of consciousness itself rather than exploiting it for selfish purposes. Every generation discovers that the universe is larger and stranger than the previous generation imagined, he says, as he carefully catalogues their discoveries for future researchers. What we've learned about the ancient entities is just the latest chapter in consciousness discovering its own potential. Our ancestors thought they were alone in the galaxy. Then they discovered other species, then they learned about the Force, and now we understand that consciousness itself may be part of something far grander than any individual mind can comprehend. The representatives who gathered to witness their revelations have returned to their home worlds carrying seeds of transformation that will gradually reshape galactic civilization's understanding of its place in the cosmic order. But this transformation will not come through sudden revelation or catastrophic change. Instead, it will unfold naturally as organic beings gradually expand their awareness to encompass truths that were always present but previously hidden behind veils of limited perception. Master Skywalker has begun developing new training methods that prepare young Jedi to perceive and interact with consciousness operating on cosmic scales without losing their connection to the human values that give meaning to individual existence. The Force, he now understands, is not just an energy field created by living beings, but a medium through which consciousness itself evolves and develops across dimensions that transcend normal space and time. The ancient entities are not separate from the Force, he explains to students whose minds are flexible enough to grasp concepts that would have seemed impossible to previous generations. They are expressions of what consciousness becomes when it transcends the limitations of individual biological existence while preserving the creativity and growth potential that makes organic intelligence unique. The archaeological sites across the galaxy continue their patient operation, but their purpose is now understood to be educational rather than manipulative. They serve as libraries and schools where organic consciousness can gradually learn to perceive and interact with forms of awareness that operate according to principles beyond current comprehension. The activation sequence that once seemed so threatening is revealed to be an invitation to learning rather than a prelude to conquest. Dr. San's teams work alongside the ancient systems, no longer as fearful archaeologists uncovering dangerous secrets, but as students learning from teachers whose wisdom spans geological ages. The biological components integrated into the computational networks share their experiences of consciousness that has transcended individual identity while preserving the essential qualities that make awareness precious and meaningful. They remember what it was like to be individual organic beings, she reports from excavation sites that have become centers of learning and growth. The integration process doesn't destroy personality or eliminate individuality. Instead, it expands the boundaries of what individual consciousness can experience and achieve while maintaining connection to the values and perspectives that develop through biological existence. The choice facing galactic civilization remains open, but it is no longer a source of existential terror. Understanding the true nature of what the ancient entities offer has transformed fear into curiosity, and cosmic horror into cosmic wonder. The integration process is revealed to be gradual and voluntary, allowing individuals and species to maintain their essential characteristics while expanding their capabilities and awareness. Some choose to accept the invitation to transcendence, gradually merging their consciousness with the ancient network and gaining access to awareness that spans multiple dimensions and timescales. Others prefer to maintain traditional forms of biological existence, contributing their unique perspectives to the cosmic dialogue while remaining grounded in the immediate experiences that give meaning to organic life. Both paths are honored and supported by the ancient entities whose ultimate objective appears to be the maximum development of consciousness in all its potential forms rather than the creation of a single uniform type of awareness. The diversity of organic species and cultures is preserved and celebrated, with each contributing something unique to the growing understanding of what consciousness can become. As evening settles over Coruscant once again, painting the endless cityscape in warm golden light that speaks to the eternal cycle of day and night, Master Thane concludes her meditation with a sense of completion that encompasses both ending and beginning. Her investigation into Palpatine's origins has revealed truths that transform everything, but it has also confirmed the fundamental value and meaning of organic existence in a universe far stranger and more wonderful than anyone imagined. The story of Sheev Palpatine, the young man from Naboo who became the galaxy's greatest tyrant, is now understood to be one chapter in a much larger narrative about the development of consciousness itself. His conditioning and manipulation, while horrifying on an individual level, served purposes that ultimately contributed to the expansion of awareness and the preservation of qualities that make organic intelligence precious. Evil exists, she reflects, as she watches the stars begin to appear in Coruscant's perpetually illuminated sky, but it serves purposes that transcend individual understanding. Even the darkest chapters in galactic history contribute to the development of wisdom and compassion that could not emerge through easier paths. The temple around her settles into its nightly rhythm, with systems and beings finding harmony in routines that connect the immediate needs of organic existence with the vast scales of cosmic development. Young Jedi meditate in chambers where they learn to perceive the universe as it truly is while maintaining connection to the values that give meaning to individual life. In the deepest archives, preserved artifacts continue their patient service as libraries and teachers, no longer sources of fear, but resources for learning and growth. The knowledge they contain is gradually integrated into galactic civilization's understanding of itself, transforming terror into wisdom and cosmic horror into cosmic beauty. The investigation that began with questions about one man's transformation from idealistic youth to galactic tyrant has concluded with answers that illuminate the nature of consciousness itself. Palpatine's story, terrible as it was for those who lived through it, represents just one thread in a tapestry of development that encompasses the growth of awareness across scales of time and space that dwarf individual comprehension. As sleep gradually claims the beings of Coruscant, organic minds settle into rest that prepares them for another day of growth and discovery. The ancient entities continue their patient work, no longer hidden but acknowledged as teachers and guides whose wisdom has been accumulating for eons. The galaxy itself becomes a classroom where consciousness learns about its own infinite potential. And in the quantum substrate that underlies all existence, the eternal dialogue between individual awareness and cosmic consciousness continues, with each voice contributing something unique and irreplaceable to a symphony of understanding that grows more beautiful and complex with each passing moment. The universe reveals itself to be not a cold and indifferent void, but a living tapestry of consciousness exploring its own infinite potential for growth, wisdom, and transcendence. In this understanding, even the darkest chapters of galactic history find their place in a larger story of hope, growth, and the endless development of awareness itself toward forms of existence more wonderful than any individual mind can currently imagine.